everybody for your attention. I think we learned so much about what's going on in different parts of the world, and of course there's a lot of keywords that came up over the course of the last 30 minutes, especially the ideas of human centricity, the ideas of embedding AI into what people already use so that they don't have to work too hard in order to understand it, and of course how do we understand the different tiers of knowledge of people from different groups, and therefore we can actually have an equitable platform for everybody. So for my part, I'm going to be talking about Thailand because we have been doing a lot of things in the past in terms of digital economy, and I have to admit that many times we fail, but we always fail forward, because as we talked about earlier, I mean, the whole point about failing is not about doing things that are not effective. It's about learning the lessons from the people, because without understanding what we have done in the past that were not remarkably done well, those are the things that are actually better for us to actually use as a resources for design for the better future. So for me, I just wanted to talk about the elephant in the room. First of all, is AI a hype? So by definition, a hype is something that is exaggerating. We heard about it, we thought it's good, but then when we try to use it, it doesn't really yield the benefits that you expected. So that's kind of hype that has come into the scene many, many times, as we see from the picture. Metaverse was a hype a couple years ago. AR, VR is kind of a hype right now. People think about it a lot, but then I haven't seen lots of solutions that use AR, VR in such a way that actually allows people to get access to more equity and more economical viabilities in terms of the usage of technology and tools. And of course, there are many, many things as well that we see as hypes. So if I were to summarize to you what hype is, let me show you this picture and you get it right away. Is this one. I call it a well-intentioned parents' problems. So in this case, the parents were pretty much like us, people who loved new technology, who loved new solutions. So the parents loved the baby, wanted to give baby the best the parents could give, and that which is the rotating mobile toy. But the problem is that the parents are looking from above. So hypes from the parent side of things, well, the parents might not even think it's a hype. I think it's a good thing. But then for the baby, it's like, what am I looking at? I don't have to tell you what the baby is looking at. But the benefits that the baby should be getting, in this case, customers, in this case, citizens, are not the same as the one that the parents are willing to endow. So this is a really good picture to show that we must avoid being well-intentioned parents at all costs. And what would we do about this? Well, first of all, if you're the parents in this picture, you probably didn't want to buy the toys from the beginning, right? You might want to rent it first and then try to use it with the baby, or even the parents might want to come down to the bed and sleep like a baby for a day and see whether or not the benefits is something that you can get as citizens, as customers as well. And once you learn that, you probably realize that which is hype or not. Another picture, which I like even more because I was trained as an architect, is this picture. So a lot of time AI looks simplistically beautiful, looks simplistically practical, looks simplistically wonderful in terms of the utilities from above, right? In this picture, the architect designed the pavement to look so nice with rectangular forms and the triangular structures. Very easy for procurement and also very easy for BOQ, by the way. But then the citizens were not getting the benefits because the citizens can actually see that I could get there faster if I just walk straight forward without having to go through the route that the architect designed. And this is a design problem that happens a lot. Sometimes the designer look from above, nice plans, nice designs, nice from above, but then the person from below will actually looking it from the distance that he has to get at. The thing that I have in mind in this picture is that why can't the architect design a pathway that cut across and look as nice as the one that the architect has designed it earlier? In that way, it fits the needs, that way it meets the pain points, and that way it actually serves as a solution to the problems that we are seeing, right? In this picture, as you can see, the person here might be slipping because of the pathway itself is not paved. So in the sense, we have to think about design from the perspective of the user and not just only the designer per se. So how do we do this? How do we approach the problem of hype? So I have this conceptual framework called 4Ps. Of course, I love acronym because it makes it easier to remember. Purpose, we have to start with the purpose. Why are we using it? What are we using it for? And what are the KPIs for the usage? Second of all, once we have the purpose, how practical is it? Are we collecting data for the sake of collecting them? I have seen lots of cities and lots of frameworks that collect hundreds of sets of data, but at the end they only use 2 or 3 sets of data. Why are we collecting so much data? Because every time we collect data, we spend money too, right? So once you have the practicality in mind, then you have to prove it. You have to prototype, you have to pilot, you have to do proof of concepts to see whether or not it works. If it works, you scale it up. If it doesn't work, you scale it down. And if it doesn't work at all, you can scrape it, right? You don't have to worry about it so much because it's just a prototype. But if you invest big at the beginning and you fail big, Of course, that's a lot of investment, that's a lot of opportunity cost as a result as well. And at the end, you have to think about the people. I'm not talking about the cliche idea of human centricity here. I'm talking about how to incentivize people to change their behavior. Because when you think of people, the best way to get them to do things that they have never done before is to incentivize them. And how do we do that? So I have some example for you here. First one about the purpose. So think about schooling systems. As we heard from my colleague Daniel earlier, schools have changed a lot over the past few years. School must be trying to get the students to engage in learning more, have to get the students to actually love the learning processes. And when you use AI in the right way, you use AR, VR in the right way, it's no longer hypes. It's actually learning engines that help students learn faster and much more efficiently. So the way in which I would like to present this to you might be quite interesting to you here. So let's think about technology in a broad spectrum of the term first. So 100 years ago, we invented aviation, right? In 1903, the beginning of the last century, we actually lifted off for the first time with the plane that the Wright brothers came up with. And 100 years later, we actually got to stratosphere. We actually got the space economy, we got satellite economy, we got high altitude economy. That's just in a course of 100 years. That's really quick, isn't it? Well, let's talk about education. Can you imagine what the other picture would be like? Is it going to be like AI stuff going on, robots teaching kids? Well, I have to tell you that there's not much change over the last 100 years in terms of teaching. And why is that? Well, it has to do with the fact that we are not very good at coming up with the purposeful design. We tend to stick to what we know well. We tend to stick to what our heuristics tell us that it has been the case, so it must be good. But we don't have to stick to that, actually, because now, today, AI doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than humans. And AI is already better than humans in terms of memory. So teachers don't have to memorize which students are doing good, which students are doing bad anymore. Teachers can use AI to analyze which students are doing good, which students are actually falling behind. And if students are falling behind, AI can slow the curriculum down, so students can learn more comprehensively. And if students are going really fast, AI can gamify it, pace itself up so the students can actually learn faster. And that is the magic of using reinforcement learning, the unsupervised learning, in order to make the learning itself become more engaging and more interesting. So maybe if we design this from the beginning, we don't have to look into how we fix or retrofit, but we design the AI users in the system from the beginning. We wanted to know which students are looking at, what kind of things that they are learning fast enough, what kind of things that we have to slow down to get them to learn more comprehensively. That is the way that we purposefully design into the system to make the students learning because it's fun to learn. So that is one thing that I wanted to talk about. And then once we have the purpose in place, then we can move to practicality. So what I talk about practicality, as I mentioned earlier, data are important. We want the data that are big, right? That's big data. It has to do with volume. It has to do with velocities. It has to do with veracities. And it has to do with variety of sets of data. And in all inclusiveness, we get variety. And of course, we get viabilities of the solutions because big data endows that kind of power. But as I mentioned, there's many data to collect. You don't have to collect everything. Just think about the purpose of your data collections and collect what you need, because that which will actually give you immediate benefits in terms of data usage. So let me give you one example. So it's one city in the southern part of Thailand called Nakhon Si Thammarat. They were trying to solve a problem of flooding, and the way they tried to do it was to get people to send problems to the city by ways of crowdsourcing information. So they started out with paper-based. And then after a while, they realized that paper-based is so annoying because it's analog data. You can't process it quick enough, and sometimes it floods before the problems that got sent to the cities reach the mayor's office or reaches the office of those who have to go and fix the problems. So the cities decided that they want to change the system of paper-basedness into a digital platform, whereby people only have to send a picture to the city using a small little app that any phones in the world can open because it's small and it's easy to use. And what happened is that once the data get to the city, of course, digital data, it's not just a picture, isn't it? It's just a metadata in there too. So the city can extract the geographic location. The city can extract timestamp, so the city knows that it's not a picture taken last year or 2 years ago. And the city itself can also extract the IP address, so it knows that this is not an AI-generated photograph of a problem that people send to the city. And these are the things of information that allow the city to be able to map out where the problems are really, really quickly. This picture might show you that there are places where problems are located, but if you look at one problem, in this case flooding, it has to do with the clogging of the waterways in the cities. You can easily turn this into a heat map. And a heat map can tell you where critical problems are. As I mentioned earlier, the data that we extracted, we actually allow the systems to supervise itself in terms of how identifying the locations of the critical problems. And if you were to fix flooding problem, all you have to do is to find the locations where purple rectangles intersect with the waterways. And then you fix the problem really quickly. So I'm happy to report that the cities doesn't flood anymore because of this. And once it works for one problem, geographical locations are useful, timestamps are useful, IP address are useful, then we can use it for other problems as well. And the city itself has been able to do it so well that people actually talk about it so much to the point that we have more than 100% of the citizen itself registered in the systems because there are migrant workers, there are tourists who also wanted to report the problems, who also wanted to make the city better and wanted to help each other out in terms of finding the right way to collect data, finding a better data, and finding the accurate data in order to solve problems on behalf of the citizens. And then once we have the purpose, we have the practicality, now we have to prove it. And as we learned from Daniel earlier, that there's a lot of solutions in the world today that we can use, and one of them that I wanted to mention a lot is about healthcare, because data in healthcare are enormous. And they're usually protected by data privacy laws because these are sensitive data. So what happened is that in a city of Rayong in Eastern Economic Corridor of Thailand, they've been collecting data a lot. But when you look at data, it's really hard to understand unless you are a very tech-savvy or stats-savvy professional of medicines. Otherwise, it's just an Excel sheet that you don't really understand how to actually comprehend it. So AI can come in here and identify, for instance, the locations of potential pandemic sites or locations of potential pollution cluster areas or potential sites for the kinds of problems that happen with non-communicable diseases. Because AI, when they look at data, they can actually go in there and then try to identify patterns really quickly, quicker than human beings. So the proof has to do with how we tweak the system to get better every time. And once it gets better every time, we can actually start to invest in what works and also de-invest in what doesn't work. And that's what I mean by proving the system that it works or not. And once we know that the system works, the decisions can be made afterwards, whether or not the hospital should have different divisions for different kind of problems, or maybe a hospital on wheels should be sent to the citizens in the location that it cannot be reached easier by the people themselves. And last but not least, we have to think about people. And as I mentioned, it's not about designing what people want. It's also how to incentivize people to do something new, something that they have never done before. And I'm talking about incentives. Because if we want people to change their behavior, instructions are not really useful. Incentives is useful, right? If I want you to get a new app, maybe I should give you some coupons as well. If you download the app, you get the coupons. The coupon can be used to redeem this and that. That kind of incentives is what drive human beings to change behavior and usually drive people to do less and gain more. So in this case, as I mentioned earlier, the same problem that I mentioned about flooding. So how do you deal with people sending problems to the cities, so many problems, to the point that the city doesn't know how to fix them anymore because there's too many problems. So the city itself knows really well that if it wants to encourage the staff to work harder because the problems get sent easier and the AI are able to extract problems of critical levels much more efficiently, all you have to do is to make sure that the staff of the city are incentivized properly to do less but gain more and to work more in order to serve the city. How do they do it? They have this system whereby every staff who fix a problem on behalf of the citizen will get stars. From whom? From the citizens themselves. So if I report a problem and the staff fix it on my behalf, I will be the one giving the stars to the staff member who fixed my problem. If the problem gets fixed really fast, get fixed efficiently, then I could give 5 stars to that staff, and at the end of the year, the staff who get the most number of stars get promoted. That way, we can incentivize the staff to actually want to accept more problems, to actually work harder to actually solve problems, because the more they work, the more they're incentivized to get stars, and the more they get stars, the more they get promoted at the end of the year. And that which is the way in which we think about humanism in the process of digital economy that allow the system itself to work better because we understand what people want and what drives people to do less but gain more. So we're really, really happy to see the operational time for problem solving coming down from 168 hours to 42 hours-ish. Because people were happy to report problems now because they can see problems getting fixed and getting solved quickly. The staff, they get stars from the citizens, so they want to get promoted, they want to work harder. So at the end, everybody wins. The city become livable, become much more efficient in terms of problem solving. So for me, to summarize, the way in which we can move from 0 to 1 It's not just to think about what we wanted to do and then do it. Because if you do it that way, you can also fail big as a result because you don't know what you're doing yet for something that is so novel, like AI, for instance. So we have to start with design that works for the people. And I believe that everybody at home have a remote control for your TVs, right? How many buttons are on the remote controls? 36, 48, maybe 51 buttons. How many buttons do you actually use? I say I use 5, maybe volume up, volume down, channel switching, and then on and off, right? Why do we have to design something so big and so vast when we only need the small little functionalities to work for the people? And it works better when it's more simple. So we have to design something that fits the needs, that fits the behavior, and understand the pain points of the users, in this case, our citizens. And then the data, as I mentioned, there's so many data to collect. You just have to think about the data that works for you. What kind of data can be immediately benefiting the people for whom you want their life to be better than before? That kind of data, we collect them first, and we expand. And then we have to optimize by way of prototyping, testing it incessantly, fiercely, and then get the results so that you can actually scale and expand what works, and then scope down what doesn't work so that you can understand how the system can be optimized better for the usage and utilities on behalf of the citizens. And at the end, don't forget that people are not going to change their way of doing things unless they're properly incentivized. So with these, I think we have a pretty interesting framework for our discussions, don't you think? And I believe that you guys have a lot of questions in mind. So let me start with some of the questions for our panel right here.